Hey, Small Beans listener, did you know we're in the process of trying to make a movie? It's true. It's called Papa Bear and tells the story of the time my dad came out as a gay furry when I was 17. We're currently looking for investors, creative partners, and talent to attach to the project. If you'd like to know more or to see our script, lookbook, and business plan, please hit us up at allthesmallbeans@gmail.com. Small Beans patrons can also listen in on the whole process by checking out our movie production diary series over at the Patreon. Thanks for your time, and now on with the pod.
Welcome everybody to another Frame Rate. That's the show where we rate frames.
Very clever.
It's cute.
It's good.
What's with the sass? Good. You're already coming in with sass.
That's the way my mama made me. Super sassy. Double sassed.
Well, welcome to the show. I am Abe Epperson. I'm one of your co-hosts, and I'm joined here with...
No, we're joined together. We're intertwined, baby.
Yeah, at the hip.
At the brain. At the movie brain. At the movie gland. I'm Michael Swaim, and honored to be here with Abe, of course, as always, but also with our very, very special guest, first time here on Small Beans, a writer of great renown in my heart, who you would know from things like She-Hulk, the Spider-Punk comics, great run, and very excited about the new season of Futurama. Please welcome Mr. Cody Ziglar. Welcome.
Hey, what's up, guys? Thanks for having me, and thanks for the kind words.
Oh, of course, super sincere. You were a total cold call, and I think this is interesting because this will probably come up in the conversation about the film we're covering right now. But I was like, I'll just, every once in a while, there's someone I just super love on Twitter.
Oh, thank you.
I find out they're an excellent comedy writer, and I'm like, we got to try and get them.
Oh, yeah.
And thank you for just immediately being like, yeah, I'll do it.
Of course, yeah. Glad to be here. Yeah. Sorry I had to reschedule a couple times, but yeah, I'm glad to be here.
No. That's always the way it goes. But we are talking 1999's American movie, and we usually kick this show off by asking Cody, or our guest, what we sent you like a huge list of movies it could have been. Why American movie? What's your relationship to it, and what made it stand out to you?
Oh, it's a doc that I saw maybe 8 or 9 years ago. I've only seen it once in full, and everything else has just been clips. But I remember, like, I knew who those characters were. I knew who Mark and Mike were just from, I think they had like a random cameo, like a bizarre cameo without even named on like a Family Guy or something like that. I was like, who are these weirdos? And I'd always heard about this movie, like, you gotta see American movie. And I watched it. I think I might have just gotten to film school when I was watching it. I was like, oh my God, I love these guys. It's truly was such a it's one of those pieces of like cinema where you watch it and you're like, oh, this drive could, like, this is like the drive you need, I think, to do any art. If you want to be a writer or like the best basketball player, whatever, is like having the drive is one crucial aspect, and the other aspect is like being able to fulfill that to cash that check when you get it. And it's someone who has made stuff. You guys both worked at Crack. You guys always know, like, to make things, like watching the process of like just pre-production and watching it fall apart. I rewatched like a couple of scenes last night, and when the guy is calling, he's like, hello, I'm casting a movie, and like just that whole aspect of it, like, it's such a unique movie, and all the characters are so unique in it. Like, I still quote Mike when he's like, I had a soda pop. Like, I had a soda pop in the fridge. Like, I've seen the movie once all the way through it. I've been quoting that for like a decade. Like,
stuck in the head. Yeah,
it's such a unique movie, and those are such unique, weird characters that it's hard for you not to be endeared by them, particularly Mark.
Yeah, and what a 1999 moment when he goes to Uncle Bill. Yeah, it's a new soda pop from Coca-Cola. It's called Surge. He's like, this is good.
Yeah,
man, took me back.
Yeah,
and I'm someone who I don't know about you fellas, but like, it will take some cajoling for me to watch a doc. I usually am a story or a fiction dude, and Yeah, and yet every time I do, especially one that's been like vetted by society and I know is good, man, they're so good. This speaks about themes that I sort of thought it was a dunk on doc, The guy Chris Smith, I think, or Chris Chris Smith. He also produced Tiger King, Fire, and Jim and Andy, the Jim Carrey thing about making Man on the Moon. So sometimes it feels like he does that brand of reality where you're like, look at these weirdos. And it's not look at these weirdos.
Yeah.
But I gotta say, as someone who has made, wants to continue making, and hopes to make video projects specifically of different scales, like so much stuff is so universal. The stuff that Mark says, you're like, you're not in the position I'm in. You have different constraints, a different life situation. But the stuff you say about why we create is totally, I feel it too. Yeah.
And really, this is, but I think it was probably shot in like 90. It had to be, if it was released in 95, it had to be shot in like 93, 92, 93, 94. But like, seeing what he was able to do with resources where you don't have internet, he would, like, you see in the movie, like he would literally have to go to like the local community college to cut on reel to reel. Like the fact that he was able to make as much stuff as he was, giving them like technological strengths and like the money restraints, like, I really would like to have seen what someone like that would be doing, like in this day and age when all you need is truly like
just an iPhone,
an iPhone, or like you spend $200 on like some used Canon and like you just make whatever the thing is. Like that spirit is, I find that spirit to be very redeeming, and also, it's one of those movies where like that early to mid era year of the 90s were like Slackers and like Clerks, and like this movie all have like a very specific energy, and the fact that this movie was able to capture that as a documentary is something that I also find very endearing. Like there's just something so unique about like the movies, like those indie movies released in the mid 90s that I still find very endearing, and it holds a special place in my heart.
There's something really interesting because I also watched the movie like 10 years ago, and I really enjoyed it this time more. I think the first time I watched it, there's something, it's one of those movies that really does change as you change, because we're all professionals, we're all creatives. I was really taken back, I think, what was more front and center the first time I watched it, because I was earlier in my journey as like an artist and a developer. Like I was still trying to find my voice, and I was frustrated at the world and at myself about finding a voice. And what bothered me so much about Mark is that he is, as you said, like he's basically undeniable. He is vision first. He just talks about whatever he wants to talk about. There's a quote from an interview that was actually held with him recently. And there's one thing that I just wanted to highlight, which just really speaks to me. Like, this is another guy who's looking back 20 years ago and 30 years ago and like saying like, oh, this is what's true about me. And he says, I don't have an idea for a film. I just film, he says now. I like being outside, and I don't like small talk. So at gatherings, I'm not going to get involved in conversation because it doesn't interest me. And I, for one, I'm exactly the opposite way. Everything's got to be planned and meticulous and discussed, because that's the fun of the journey for me. For him, it's something else. And I remember initially I was really reacted against that negatively, because I was like, this is a guy who is like a red carpet director. He wants to be the thing so desperately that he'll lie to himself. And this time we're watching the movie, my takeaway is that like the movie's truly about how something, even if it's fake, can be just so powerfully genuine. Like he wants to be, it's true that he wants to be a filmmaker and succeed so much. And he has these things that he wishes that you think of him. And we all kind of have that, and we all have that insecurity and need to be perceived in some way. But I think that the doc really lands hard on just like, you gotta persevere if you want to be an artist, and that is really endearing.
That's funny. I had a very similar thought watching it now. I guess at this point, 10 years removed, and like I'm sort of into the career, like I'm sort of taking the steps I want to take to get to where I want to get. And now watching that with that frame of mind, a lot of my takeaway was like, like that's the fucking spirit you gotta have. We can curse on this. Can we curse on this? Yeah, that's the fucking spirit you gotta have. Like, you have so many people telling you the thing is not going to be made, or it's impossible, you can't do it, it's going to be bad, blah blah blah. But like, you really need that one voice in the back of your head saying, "Fuck it, who cares if it's bad? At least I took the shot." And like, that's very much what Mark embodies. And also like having, speaking of, since we're speaking of like 90s cinema, like I remember Kevin Smith had this story that he would tell, and I won't go through all the story, but the main takeaway was like, really the thing that sort of changed for me being Kevin Smith is that I decided to surround myself with people that asked why not instead of just why. Like, why would you want to make a movie about being clerks in New Jersey? Why would you do that? Instead of being like, why not make that? And like a thing that now watching that, like I really enjoy Mike for that reason. Is that like, yes, he's a very goofy guy and it's very easy to dunk on that, but like having that truly that ride or like literally ride or die in the back of your pickup truck as you shoot your shitty movies, like
Right.
that's such an important person to have in your life, particularly if you're trying to do something in the arts in a country where it does not, we don't have a lot of endowments for the arts. It's not like, Australia, New Zealand, or Canada, or England, where you have a whole treasure trove of money just like pluck from and give to people. So you get things like Fleabag or whatever like thing is going to come out. Like having that enduring spirit and being in the middle of nowhere, USA, with really no access to equipment, but having the why not person is such an endearing thing, an important thing to have. And like now I watch that, I can really appreciate this movie a lot more with that point of view.
Yeah, I absolutely agree.
Yeah, it really struck me also what you were saying about it changing as you age in or like experience further steps of a career in entertainment, because like since the last time I watched this, I've fallen into a severe like years long of alcoholism, gone to AA and cleaned up.
Yeah.
And so there's this like thread that as a young person, I watched this, I think in college, as a much more sort of cynical, no, it wouldn't have been, it must have, no, I think it was maybe early in college, but much more cynical, like chip on my shoulder, like, well, I know my potential and what's going to happen for me, right? I was still early enough to think like, let's all look at this guy. Oh, it's so funny how he delusionally thinks he can make a movie and he can't.
But you got to have that delusion, that's the most important part. You got to.
And yeah, you got to bully your mom into putting on a black robe and trudging out into the snow for fucking hours.
Let's not be, he is an asshole.
That's what I mean.
It's fine to
No,
say.
and that's what I'm saying. And Mark Shank, rest in power, does the
Mike Shank.
Sorry, Mike Shank. I'm switching
Borchardt.
Marks and Mikes, but he accomplishes something I, in no firsthand, is like nearly impossible. He quits drinking and drugs, and it's like this subtle B plot that is sort of glossed over. But Mark is a severe alcoholic, and I don't like. Hopefully, he's somehow found a healthier relationship with that. But I completely went over my head as a young person, and now I'm like, that's so wrapped into it so masterfully. It's really well put together. Speaking of, and yes, I do think we have to mention, if people haven't seen this, that's not there. Like, they are weirdos. He is an asshole. He says shit that, if you've made films, makes you laugh. Like, we've got every F stop known to man in this movie.
That was so good. Yeah, I love that.
We got every F stop known to man.
I almost think that that's like a drunken joke. It's almost like he's aware of what he's saying, because he is very competent in a lot of ways. He's studied. Yeah. But I think really gets in his way. And I think this is true about a lot of artists. Like, he so desperately wants, like, he's ill-equipped in a lot of ways as a competent filmmaker. I would say there's a lot of stuff he does know, but there's a lot of things that he doesn't get about that position of like a director or a producer. Like, he doesn't care who his crew is. He gets angry at his mom at one point when she operates the camera, like when he's getting filmed. He has this expectation that like everyone is in tune with his love, his passion, and it's just not the case. And he fails to see that. That is such a like obvious blinders to me, like, about how like artists sometimes see the world. And it's fervidly indie. It's like, I just want to make my great movie. Why don't you understand and like meet me halfway? No one has to meet you halfway, man. You have to do this all your own. That's what makes funny, because
that is like the lesson that would be the big takeaway lesson, right? Is like, even on the thing that you have poured decades into, you've cared so much about it. You get fucking $200 million to make your movie. There's some grip who does not give a shit. He's there. They are there to get their fucking union hours. So they can go home and see their kid like they should, because who gives a shit about this movie that they have no stakes in? Like, there's always going to be someone who doesn't give a shit about the thing that you're making, but like, you have to persevere through that and go through it. Also, the people that you're going to be working with ostensibly for 12, 14, 15 hours a day, as you make a movie, like, you don't want to be mean to them. Like, you don't want to be around assholes all day. And like, that's really, I'm watching this again, I'm also like, it's really the forest for the trees. Like, it's really the small problems that that they're like gumming him up. Like, yeah, there's no way that his mom should know how to operate a 16 millimeter camera. Like, I can barely operate a 16 millimeter camera, and I went to film school. You know, it's like
Right, yeah.
it's not a skill that anyone's just going to like naturally pick up.
Oh, and just the lack of instincts of like cramming a very nice man. Like, this is the guy who I believe says, it's his life's dream and he's so passionate about it. I can lose 10 weekends to make that happen.
Yeah.
And that hit me here because, like, and case in point, like you being on this podcast, Cody, it's like, all the time I reach out to other writers, comedy writers, creatives, and help them and get help from them. Like, it's one of the few jobs where, like, I think it's very unlikely that an accountant could call in another accountant and be like, can I have like 2 to 3 hours of your professional time because we're both accountants. There is this brotherhood of like, we all know it's a dream job. We all know like how bad everyone wants it. And I think there's something very beautiful about that. And it's like sad and funny to see the lack of instinct of taking that dude and cramming his head into a door over and over. And like, I felt genuine tension. That's when you're on a set and you feel that feeling like, oh shit, we're off the rails. They're going to hurt this man.
And I love how the documentary plays it. Like, he finally goes, oh shit, man. Like,
this is really thick.
This is really thick. I'm sorry about doing this. And it's just like, yeah, man, no shit. You should have known that from the first hit. It continues to do it like 9 more times before they fix it. And even when they fix it, it's not like it's great. That's the thing. That's the other thing that's hard for me to like get past, is that like his movies are shitty. And I mean that with like great respect. I really do. I know that's hard to really backpedal from, but like, you have to see the world as like, some people think that of my shit, like, look at this boring ass, filmmaker or whatever. And it's just so funny to me that like, this movie is really trying to make an appeal. Mark is trying to make an appeal very much so that it's like, it doesn't matter what you do. It's only that you have the passion to make, like, follow through with what you believe is the most important thing. That is infectious. That is truly beautiful. It sometimes creates monsters of people. And that's like, you kind of just hope situations. It's an unpleasant situation that I think that in order to be a good filmmaker, you just need to have a little of that spice, and then also a little self-awareness where you're like, I'm never going to shove a dude's head in through a kitchen cabinet just because I want to. And
if it is, I'm going to be the person that's going to be my head through the thing. I think that's got to be the thrill. It is something about that indomitable spirit mixed with like, I mean, I'm the same way. Like, there are plenty of things I put out that people are like, this fucking sucks or this is bullshit, blah blah blah. But like, a lot of that is just becomes white noise at a point where like you've heard this. I mean, you can read a video comment on any cracked video and just see the most unhinged bullshit you could ever possibly see. So like, when you grow up in that environment, like, who even cares? And even adding in like Twitter and all that stuff. But like, I think at the end of the day, one of those things that I always come back to is like, I made it. It's out. Like, that's nothing. There are very few comments that you're going to read that are going to be more arduous than like making the actual thing, like, because it can be such fucking torture sometimes. Like, who even cares? But also, I feel like, and I'm sure Mark probably falls into this more, is like, they're never going to hate the thing or be more critical of the thing that than the art that they actually made it. Like, I can only imagine. Well, I mean, actually, I say that but I say that the whole through line is like, he makes a bunch of movies that are pretty bad, but he loves them still. But like, it's still like, there are going to be critiques that he has for those movies that no one on the IMDb, comment threads are going to have a take on. And I think that's sort of the part of the indomitable spirit that you need to have. And also, you need to be a little blind. You need to just be like, choke it down. And be like, we're making something special here. Coven's going to be a very special thing that's going to put this town on the map.
Yeah. And like that no one can ever take away.
Exactly.
It amazed me that the movie crescendos with a fucking packed house of people applauding, because it's like, yes, everything's a spectrum, man. Like, maybe it's just your small town and your little movie, your short 35 minutes short that most people would call worse than an average film. But you got everyone together, you did it, you spent X amount of time with your people making this. Here it is, people watched it. The circle of art is complete. Like, you did it, man. And it is heartening, I think, to check in on him now and see that, yes, he does a lot of stunt casting stuff. Like, he was in Cabin Fever 2 and shit. And, you know, he's been in a lot of stuff as himself or as a reference to American movie, but he's made several docs of his own since then. And like, it's cool to me that he's doing it. I also watched, I don't know if you guys watched Coven, because I hadn't before, and of course you can find it on YouTube. It's 35 minutes, and like, I gotta say, it's not as I expected. I think watching the making of makes it seem worse than it is. It's not like The Room bad or Trolls 2 or something. It looks like a film. It's just like not great. It's just fine.
And also, there's a whole ecosystem of like, quote unquote, bad movies that like if you go to Amazon, I mean, I love Amazon Prime. Not the company, but like, I like their catalog, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
but like, if you're someone who appreciates that type of movie, which I very much do, like the quote unquote bad movie, like they have, I think, for my money, the best selection of like those types of movies, like particularly movies that are like particularly literally shot on VHS, like like just as far as like library, keeping a library and like a catalog of those things and indexing, like it's a very great site to have. But also, like, there's a whole slew of directors who just, that's their living, is they make these low budget, you know, shoestring movie horror films. And like
the Cormans,
yeah, exactly, yeah, the Cormans. Like, you could very much see, you know, if Mark would have landed, you know, in a different place or taken a left instead of a right, he could very much become one of those, like, he's a director for hire, for that's what he does for a living. He doesn't make a lot of money, but he makes a bunch of stuff, and maybe the quality isn't always great, but he gets to fulfill that thing that he wants to fulfill.
Jumping off that, which is another kind of realization or thing that I thought about a lot when I was watching this, is that now that we live in kind of like, we talked about earlier in this podcast how we've changed and how our perception of like just these small little details of this movie changed, but also society itself has changed, and we've gotten very sardonic about bad movies, and because it is beloved, like you were just speaking to. And you mentioned The Room, Mike, and Tommy Wiseau is like this joke, right, that we all kind of like, that's fairly zeitgeisty at this point. Like, he's just so blind and oblivious in a lot of ways that I think Mark does share in this movie in particular. And you know, Coven may be good or not or whatever, and people can land on that, but like, as an artist, how do you deal with the fact that there's a few comments where he says like, oh yeah, and I was aiming to sell like 3,000 like 3,000 of Coven, you know, at $15 a piece, and I ended up selling 5,000. And I, you know, obviously this documentary, you know, I want to thank like American Movie for getting us past that.
Right.
And I think a lot of the purchases, which Mark has to be self-aware about, are these kind of ironic purchases. It's kind of in the same way that the Room is kind of like, everyone's doing it for the lulz. And so then I'm left with this kind of question about like, as like in terms of the integrity of the artist, or just as your like your soul as a person, how to be a failure. If you know you're kind of the joke, how do you deal with that? Do you internalize it by just like running it over with a steamroller and just, it's now a part of the road, baby? Or do you actually kind of have to unpack that? And how do you do that? Because a lot of people will come at you with, you know, that shade.
That's a good question. I'm wondering that too. I feel like you could go a bunch of different routes, but I feel like the main route is like Tommy Wiseau speaking, that like you can lean into it, and like his whole thing is like, I'm going to make bad movies, but they don't have that charm because there's nothing earnesty behind what he's making. Whereas someone like Roger Corman, for instance, like, yes, not even like bad. I want to get away from the word bad movie, but like he's very aware of what type of movie he makes, which is like B flicks, exploitation genre films. He makes like the what's the paracinema, like that's what he leans into, like low budget paracinema, and out of that school comes a bunch of really talented motherfuckers. That's where you get like your Cameron. That's where you get I think
many actors.
So many talented actors. Like, you just get a lot of really talented people coming out of that school, because their whole thing is like, here, you have 2 locations and $500,000. You got to make this thing work. And you're like, all right, we know what we're making. Like, we know the intention is to make the best thing that we can with what we have. And out of that, you get some really cool innovations. I think even like some of the more modern horror stuff, like even like, I think Ty West is a really great example. Like, I think you see some of his early films, like, you know, the Sacrament, the found footage film. We have a couple cameras. and very little light, but we have some really talented actors and a really tight script, and we're going to make it work. And like you see that, and you juxtapose that with like Pearl and X, like both shot at the same time. I think they cost $1 million total. They had one location, and they're like, we're going to make this work not only for one movie but for 2 movies. And that's sort of that indomitable spirit. Like I think that's something that you have to an artist would really have to juggle with, and also given their circumstances. I would be curious to know where Mark landed on that. I feel like he doesn't care. I think he's like, I made the thing, and I think it's out here. Like, you're having the last lap, but like, I'm having the last lap because I'm getting more eyes on the thing that I've made, which is what he wanted to do, I would assume, when he made the art to begin with.
I do think it's kind of sadly poetic that, as far as I could tell, I tried to Google around about it. I don't think he ever made Northwestern, and the movie ends with Uncle Bill leaving him enough money to make Northwestern, which was going to be his great American movie. But it's more like he embodies, like, I think his most recent project that's stuck in the middle of production is horror again. And they talk about his influences being classic, like found footage, grungy horror stuff. And I think that whole genre is really summed up by the ethos. He says at one point, it's 11:30 in the morning. We've got 6 hours to do 52 shots.
That's like, too many shots.
Man, go, man, go. It's inspirational, but also like, well, that's just silly. That means you don't understand.
You're gonna die trying to get that many shots, man. I've never been. I mean, man, at Cracked, we used to knock out stuff that you could compare. That I remember we would grind the Today's Topic sketches.
Right, the grindiest we ever got. How many shots was that?
It's like you shoot it like an interview, and it's just like rotating cast. So like, there's ways to shoot a lot of footage. And I remember we're like, we shot over like 70 pages today or something like that. But it's just like, that's not real if you're making like cinema, in quotations or whatever. But and he has a sense of pride about being able to like go to work like that. I know that you've seen Michael, but Cody, have you seen Deadstream?
Was that on like Shudder or something like that?
Yeah.
It's an anthology thing, right?
It's not it's the
VHS
series.
He's like a YouTuber, right? He's like a YouTuber that goes I literally just watched that like maybe 2 or 3 nights ago.
Great. The haunted house live stream, the guy with the beard.
And the reason I bring it up is because it's just like absolute creativity, thinking outside the box. There's nothing like it. Also, just imagine how much, like, they didn't have much budget to work with. The Winters, who are the director team, I think husband and wife, and they, like, there's the spirit of Mark Borchardt is like so much still alive in everybody, and sometimes people are really effectively good at it. Like I can even, if you even go back to another director duo, the Daniels, they kind of did the same kind of thing where they were just like, we're gonna be emphatically different, and that's how we're gonna get access to everything. There's just something about that spirit, I think, that Mark does embody, that you have to kind of say no to failure at every turn. You have to say, if I'm the joke, that's fine. You're watching my movies. Because if you don't, because the other thing about like the Corman thing that you mentioned is like a lot of great people went through that cycle in that studio, like actors and producers and DPs and stuff. And it came from this idea of like, well, it's because Corman was making stuff all the time. So it's going to attract people who are like, I don't care what this job is. You would just want me to scream and then, like fall in this crappy looking set. I'll take the job.
Cast,
perfect. No small jobs. And I think it needs that resilience.
And I think also a more modern version is that like, just getting the reps in. Like, I think at a certain point when you have so many things out, it just becomes like clockwork in like a way where you can like not worry about it, but also you don't care. Like, I think a lot of those like buzz, like any of the social media, any like the platforms like Cracked, Funny or Die, BuzzFeed, like when you just, I mean, it sucks in the moment we have to put out 2.5 videos a week, whatever the fuck that means. You're like, okay, I'm making 2. Okay, whatever, but like. When you're just putting stuff out and you're making things, it becomes a point where you're like, who cares? Like, I don't have time to worry about this. I'm going to make on this one video that I know is going to be out there. It may not even be great. I'm going to focus on this particular thing. I want to focus on like the production design, how to talk to production designer. All right, this next one, I'm gonna focus on like how to work with actors, specifically like with this one particular emotion, and like you just like it's like really 10,000 hours spread across a bunch of different projects while you're honing your vision.
Yep.
I think why you have a bunch of really
reps.
talented people like the Daniels, the Skull Island director, Quinta, friends in my own personal life who aren't huge, they haven't broken across yet, but they just have great work. Like, I think that's a benefit that I think now that we have, I think someone like Mark would have flourished very well in that type of environment where like you don't have to be precious about things, or at least you'll learn not to be precious. Like that's what you learn about this. Like if you're in the Corman factory, you start to learn very early on that you're not precious about the thing. You have to make the maggots wiggle so the alien lobster can eat the blonde lady. Like that's what you have to do for that week before you go
just like,
to the next project. Yeah, you know.
Yeah, the writing's terrible. Who cares?
Yeah,
we're making movies, right?
Or even I think, or hopefully you get into a groove. I can totally relate to that, where you put some out and then a couple weeks later you'll look back, or someone will remark on, or you'll see that, Jesus help me, the analytics, and realize, oh, that one was good. Oh, good. Like,
that was the good one. Oh, okay.
But you're just moving product down the line. It does become kind of like that.
That's the thing about, like, I don't get, I mean, it is romantic, so it's hard not to get romantic about it, but like, it sounds so cliche for a filmmaker to be like, that's the, beauty of cinema though. Like, cause when you look at like what content, and I really use that word, I emphatically use that word, like what we generate with our people who are like good with all the technicals, like they know how to use cameras, they know how to use makeup effects, they know how to use all of the things that like a good filmmaker on paper would know how to do. And they're super good at it.
Yeah.
And what do they create? Well, they're so driven by the like algorithmic analytics, like all these things telling them, well, you need to make another one of those because that's how you'll succeed, because you got 1 million on that and these you're getting like 45,000. So only make that content. Yeah. And it's like, you kind of have to be, in order to be a filmmaker, completely invisible to that, or like I think it hurts you as an artist if you take note of that somehow.
It can really fuck you up, man.
It fucks you up, and it makes you go, I have to be the certain thing, and like that's just not how a lot of people are. And I know it's an appeal for like, we'll create weirder content and content that isn't going to be necessarily successful and fun for the audience. Yeah, I don't know. How do you find new things? So
that's where I'm at. I mean, I feel like, I always go back to this. It's what a lot of people used to say. But when I was in art school, I remember like a lot of us, the grad students we used to get together and like just like shoot the shit, just like philosophize about whatever the art that we were making. But like we kept coming back to the idea of like, you can learn the technical skills, which is important. You can learn, all the academic skills, like how are you going to frame this? Like what are the power dynamics of the framing for this? Why is this character on the left and why to enter the right? All that stuff. But like all that stuff is very useful. But like truly the thing that cannot be taught, I think, or at least it has to be honed, is that like taste. I think taste is really the most important thing, because taste can if you have taste, even if it's just like your specific taste, like if you can hone in on that specific thing, I think you will find yourself much better off in the long run than necessarily knowing all the technical skill. Like take a thing like Adult Swim, just the concept of Adult Swim. I guess at this point, 20 years ago, whatever long it was when it was first created, I was born out of, hey, Turner was like, we have all these fucking cartoon archives that we own. Mike Laszlo, what can you and your fucking weirdos across the street on William Street make? And they're like, well, we don't have money. We don't really even have the technical skill, but we do have a sense of humor and we have taste for our very specific vision, because we've been making Space Ghost Coast to Coast. Let's just see what we can make. So they make these weird little, not even like this before this is a real thing, but like quarter hour, like no one was really watching 11-minute TV shows. That wasn't a thing that you would watch. That just
sketches,
wasn't a thing that existed.
Really.
Yeah. So like, yeah, exactly. Extended sketches. And they launched a whole network, but also a whole genre and generation of very specific comedy, because they had
essentially my lifestyle now.
Exactly. Yeah. Like, like a whole generation.
Dominating comedy force, really.
Yeah.
Like Tim and Eric, think about like I Think You Should Leave. Like it's just
C-Lab,
it's all
Venture
there.
Brothers, like
12 Ounce Mounts. Like these shows are so
huge.
ugly.
Perfect Hair Forever.
They intentionally like, who gives a shit about the animation?
Antagonize the audience too.
Yeah. It's really like, you're gonna run through a marathon. We're gonna make you earn this, but if you can stick it through, you'll enjoy it. And like, I think that's where I ended up that's where I've been landing when it comes to my creative stuff. Is that like, if I'm pretty confident right now in my career and what I've done, the body of work that I've made in my resume, where like, I think I have a good sense of taste. It doesn't line up with everyone, which is fine. That's how art works. But like, I'm confident enough in my ability and what I put out, and my sense of humor and sense of taste to begin with, that I think I can find at least 1,000 other weirdos that can align with what I like. Right. And like, that's the baseline. I think having a sense of taste, no matter how broad or narrow it is like the most foundational important thing. And I think that will also save you a lot of heartbreak, because I can't remember who said it, but they were like, truly right now in this stage and age, like in 2022, all you need is 1,000 people that really fuck with you, and you'll never have to work a shitty day job ever again, whether it's a Patreon or an OnlyFans or a Families, whatever that thing is. Like, if you have 1,000 people that are like, I like what this person is making, you will never have to work a shitty job ever again, at least in this country.
It's a large enough audience to validate your career and existence.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's something that's super, well, it's been complex. It's been a ride, right? Because it's been liberating. I think the internet age, it makes me think of, so nerdy, but like Renaissance times when there was like a patron. And in some ways that's really oppressive, because you have one YouTube commenter and you're like, I have to do whatever they think. Yeah. But on the other hand, 1,000 people is broad enough. Like, the internet, the connectivity and globalization of internet has gotten us back to, I mean, it's not lost on me that it's called Patreon, or, so back to this patronage, the direct patronage, where it's like, you don't need a theater or a space where everyone physically like, you just, here's my product. Can I get enough interest anywhere in the globe? Great. And I do think that's what makes Mark's drive so much more impressive, because we kept saying modern examples, but I don't think I can underscore enough how grueling, like when it cuts to them trying to find 2 missing frames that they have to physically cut from the film. Yeah. Because they like dropped 2 puzzle pieces essentially, and they have to go through thousands of things. I actually thought to myself, oh, if I was born like 20 years earlier than I was, it would have been I wouldn't have done it. Filmmaking. It would have been too hard. Yeah. I'm not going to do the turning the crank and the cutting the frames and being like, this is frame 6174 and you got to find it physically and tape it together. I'm not doing that shit. So like, it's all the more impressive. And I think something that changed from, 10, 15 years ago and then watching it now was I have so much more empathy for the inclement circumstances. Like I feel like at least in my upbringing, was sort of raised on this lie. I think it's cool that it's called American movie, like the American dream lie. Like, I have X amount of like potential and it's going to be materialized, and I have talent and it's inborn or whatever. And so I would judge like I watched this and remember thinking, oh, he was just like born with that talent. That's the tragedy, right? He has the drive, but not the talent. Now I'm like, it's not even necessarily that, man. Like, the first time I watched it, I thought his creepy brother was funny and correct when he says things like, I always thought he'd grow up to work in a factory, and I always thought he was like a weird stalker, or I think his movies lack any importance or meaning. And now watching it again, I'm like, you know what? Fuck that dude. Having a brother like that must have made it so much harder to do the things that Mark wants to do. And I'm like, just admire him all the more, and like his dedication to making something that matters. And at the same time, there is a darkness to it. Like it really struck me when he gets drunk and screams at the Super Bowl, which makes no sense. Every bitch ass factory working motherfucker, I will never be like you. Fuck you, motherfuckers. 40-hour a week working motherfuckers. Never. You're like, wow, man. Seeing them flip.
But also go Packers.
It's not just that he wants to be a filmmaker. He's also running from a lifestyle, right?
Yes, that's one thing. He swears that he would never do the 40-hour week. He'll never do it. It's almost like he's not running toward, like, you just said it. Like, it's not like he's running toward filmmaking in a lot of ways. A part of him is also running away from doing the normal thing, or what quote unquote normal thing, the expected thing at the time in your position. I think there's something to be said about that for how people find art and become artists too. I think it might even be a more powerful lure, especially as, like a society determines that this is how you rank success. I think people out of the mix are always going to find a way to run away from something as opposed to run towards something. But sometimes they're the same thing, so that's beautiful.
Yeah, now that we're sort of ruminating on it, whenever I would hear someone talk about, this is more like an actor thing, but they're like, someone was talking to some well-known actor, and they're like, or maybe it might have been David. What's the old dude from Stranger Things? David Harbour. Harbour. Yeah. He was talking about some like acting student asked him like, "What's the worst thing you ever decided to do?" He's like, "Become an actor," and he's like, he's like, I get that, like the drive, like you. There's a certain point when you wake up and you're like, "Oh, I want to be a painter," like, or I want to be a painter, not even the best painter. I just want to make a living being a painter, and like you truly can't go back. I can definitely empathize with Mark, because I'm like, the day I realized like, oh, I want to like do something creative for a living. Like I want to make things. I want to make stuff for a living. Like I really could not go back to my shitty job in a call center. Like I just could not do it. I was like, I would walk in and I felt so crazy. I felt like I was like Neo when he takes the pill and like he walks back into like the office first time. He's like, what is going on here? Like how, like it's like truly like the allegory of the
humans
cave.
Endure this?
Yeah, it's like we don't have to do this. Like capitalism sucks, but there's like some way to like choke it down a little bit in the society, and like that drive, I feel like you got to have it. Like you just cannot keep doing the status quo, or else a part of you, a piece of you will die. And like that's why you pack up and you move to 3,000 miles across the country to a city where you have no one, because some little thing in your brain is like, I want to be a painter. Like I want to be an artist. I want to make this thing. And like, that's especially when you're in a town like Mark was in, where I'm sure his brother is definitely not the only one. Like he's probably getting it from every single angle outside of Mike. They're like, why would you want to do this? Again, the why and why versus why not lifestyle, like getting it from every conceivable angle. But like part of that battle is having that that indomitable spirit, being like, fuck you. Something tells me that I want to be the best painter. I have to be a painter. I have to do this thing. And like, watching it now as someone who has gone through that journey, I'm like, man, Mark, he has a lot of faults, and a lot of cons, but like that fucking spirit is unbreakable. Like I totally get that screaming at the football screen, being like, I don't want to be in this shithole town. I'm not gonna be one of you. Like that's every punk song ever written. Like that's what he was embodying in that moment.
Yeah, and it's all for the more reason. That's why I think that Bill is the MVP of the movie, right?
Oh my God,
Bill is so fucking great because he
so.
encapsulates exactly what you just elucidated, which is that he is both the critic and he's like, I don't see the purpose of what you're doing, man.
Yeah,
but at the same time, he's the guy fronting the money because he doesn't care. Yeah. He's apathetic about life, and he sees that Mark is and isn't. Like he's like, you're doing something different, and but you also don't want to do the normal thing. I've lived my life to the point that I know that the normal thing is stupid.
Yeah, it's a fucking con.
Yeah, so I'll give you this $50K or whatever, even if he feels like he has to do it, or I don't even know the internal politics. But that's how it comes off in the movie to me. And he's also just an old fogey who fucking rules.
Well, he has a lot of funny moments, but he also has, like, I don't know, it struck me as very, like, Kurt Vonnegut-y, but he has that scene where I definitely got choked up where, because he has some degree of dementia, and says, come again, stick around a while, stay if you can, God help you, everybody help you, make people happy, be a comedian. Like, this amazing, like, garbled through this lens but version of validating like it struck me as such a poetic arc that the whole time he's going, this is for the birds, and acting like I'm barely here, like I'm so old that I kind of know what's going on, but fuck you, who cares? He goes, you should have dreams, Uncle Bill, and he's like, I'll be dead soon, like what are you talking about? Fully at that stage of life. And I just think it's interesting that even as he essentially rambles or like free flows thought, he says things like, it's important to make people happy and be a comedian. Like he's talking about the call of being an entertainer and being a creative himself. Even just without meaning to, or just
Stay a
letting
while,
the
sit
subconscious
down a
come out.
while.
Yeah, sit down
That
a
means
while, tell a
commit
story.
commit to the thing.
Yeah.
Do the thing as long as you can. And heaven help you. You know, God help you. You're gonna be alone. You're gonna hate it, and you're gonna have these moments where you scream to the heavens, "Why me?"
Yeah.
You know, but please somebody help me.
But then there's moments where you're recording Mike Shanks screaming, and it's fucking awesome.
It's fucking awesome.
And you're like, that was wicked, man.
It was worth it. Yeah.
Yeah, his scream was, when in that moment, I was like ready for his scream to be bad, and it's like one of the best ADR screams you've ever heard. Super, super good.
Especially coming from this guy who's just so mild-mannered.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And clearly, affected by the many drugs that he's done in his life. So he just seems like he parses words very slowly. And then he just pulls out this scream that is just like, you understand what it means to scream, my man. It's great.
Yeah.
So good. Yeah, there's that's the other thing about this movie that I felt like I dealt with this time, because kind of going back to the Wiseau thing. Let's think about, Chris Smith and company. Like, something that's weird.
I don't know the story, but I'm like, how'd you fucking find these guys?
How'd you
Are they
find
from this town, or like?
I actually don't know either.
Yeah,
but what's the instance where you're like looking at something, and you're like, this is obviously spectacular, or even like Corinne films like Gummo or something like that, which I think that there's a good argument for some that there's a element of exploitation in those movies. Just, or at least like pandering to a certain propagandist kind of version of it. I wonder what they actually thought when they were making it, because they everything we talked about in this podcast about like how genuine it is, how truthful it is, how it kind of resonates with artists. That's what makes the movie, do well at Sundance, I believe. But also there's this kind of darker notion that like the supporting roles and like the community outside of Mark, and Mark himself as, kind of a polarizing figure, is fun to watch because it's so bizarre. So in that Tommy Wiseau kind of self-exploitation, we also have a filmmaker here who's like making a documentary where it's like, just kind of show the weirdness, because that's like the fun part
of the deep Midwest,
and it makes the memes,
and
it makes people buy Coven, 5,000 units or whatever. And so it does all these things that you kind of have to admit to yourself as an artist or a documentarian, that you have to be a semi-propagandist in order to formulate like, well, this is entertainment and this is entertaining. Yeah. But like, I wonder how they rectify the exploitiveness of it, or do they even consider it exploitive?
Is it punching down at all? I don't know.
I think it's
I
interesting.
really think they do weave in pathos, and like they care about Mark. The story, the editing implies that they care about Mark, but they're not making fun of them. So if someone argued that it's mean, I guess I could agree with that to some degree.
Yeah, it reminds me. It sort of it reminds me of like the Susan Boyle effect, where like, can you believe this homely woman has a beautiful voice?
Jesus Christ!
Can you believe this person who's not beautiful has something that sounds good? Like, I think I could very much see, like, look at these fucking weirdos, and then you get there like, oh, there's a person. This isn't like, I feel like I can almost guarantee you watch any review of this movie when it first came out, you're like, these people are weird, but isn't it crazy how Mark is so endearing and how Mike is like so kind of like cute and like approachable? You're like, yes, like I get that. That's the end. That's like the guy. That's like the carnival man being like, come in and see the bearded lady or whatever. And then you get there like, oh, there's like something here that's like actually interesting and in depth. Like, I definitely see the marketing of it. I see, like, you take this movie. I mean, this is probably much different because it was like 30 years ago, but like, I could see the pitch that you would give to some Deadeye exec being like, why would people care about this? Oh, he's weird. He talks and he says soda pop. Okay. That's how, that my little monkey neuron brain is firing right now. And then once you get in there, you're like, oh, this is like a real story with like, these are real people that have thoughts and feelings. And like, now I'm affected by it. Like, and much in the same way that I'm sure that this guy pitched, Tiger King. You're like, here's a dumb, crazy redneck.
Look at all this.
Yeah, and then you get there like, all right, he is a crazy dumb, but there is some pathos in here.
Isn't that not every, but isn't that so many great documentaries? Yeah. It's the classic documentary trick is like, this story's only this big, and you get halfway through and they go, not true.
Yeah.
There's more humanity than you thought below the surface.
Yeah.
We made a good documentary.
Yeah. I don't think it matters which way, like chicken or the egg kind of thing, because like we're all on a journey and you can't really blame like the bot moving the ebbs and flows of that journey. But it is interesting that it's like some beauty or some like actual genuine gift to, you know, like some what we'd probably call art, you know, like something that is like, oh, people, I want to share this thing about people with you people, you know, like if by doing that, it kind of came from a place of like, let's do it for the lulz, you know, and that like that's particularly resonant right now. I don't know, it's just funny to me, but that's literally like the, you know, signpost of like Twitter right now, you know, because like
Musk just tweeted and deleted, I did it for the lulz. Yeah,
exactly.
literally.
So it's just like,
you know, he had tears when he was typing that out too. It's like, I'm totally okay.
Right. Like where
shrank into a corn cob.
Yeah.
And I think it's shown how like sarcastic the internet has made us, not in like necessarily a bad way, but just in the way that we approach everything. It's like we're thinking of the 5th, 6th, 7th iteration of the joke. So what's genuine? And then you see someone like Mark, and he's like, I'm only streamlining the one thing. Yeah. And you go, that I respond.
It is a strange seeing that level of earnestness. Like, I mean, we're not saying anything new. Funny enough, I just watched the big speech scene from The Dictator, where you know, Charlie Chaplin has his big speech, but he's like, one of his lines is like, we're clever. We're very clever, but we've lost our kindness. And like, I think I used to think of that every time that I would log on to Twitter before I backed off. But like, it truly is like, you know, 4th, 5th level, like from the A to F of like a joke, like people getting a lot of really, really funny jokes off, but not necessarily in place of like being a kind. Like you really, like anyone can get it too. Could be like, I think the last thing I saw was like some lady was like, I like to have coffee with my partner in the garden, and people just fucking ripping this poor bastard. And
look at this bitch.
Look at this,
and it's like, what
fucking asshole. I'm like, what did this person do? Like, are they like a secret Nazi? What are they? All right, what happened? And it's just
like, what
it's just like some random person had a really funny joke, I guess, and then like it just steamrolled. I'm like, maybe there is something to like the idea of like not thinking with like what's the first funny and being like, what's the human angle? And like, I think that is very much something that Mark represents, where like he's so I mean, everyone in that movie is so easy to dunk on because they have a bunch of very things that would not a very untypical thing that you would see. So like coming in, you see, but also you see how earnest he is and how much he truly gives a shit about the thing that he's making. Like, I think it's very hard. I think it's very rare to see that level of earnestness now, right, these days. Like, you got to have a shield, or else you're gonna get fucking flamed by some 16-year-old kid that has the perfect has been roasting people on his bus for the past 3 school years.
And it's so funny. And it's just gonna dominate you know, like because I'm not equipped for like dealing with the sarcastic like mob of Twitter, you know, like they could destroy me at any time.
Well, and it's by sheer, not to like diminish, obviously so many good, it's the whole gamut of humanities on Twitter, but Twitter also has the 5,000 monkeys at 5,000 typewriters thing, where comedy writings, if you care about being called a joke thief or whatever, which does sting if you've been a comedy writer for a long time, but it just drives home. I mean, I feel like we're getting a little off track for the movie, but any joke I think of, I type into the search bar first, and I go, oh no, 45,000 people thought of that already.
It's almost like you should just do the knee-jerk reaction.
Just be yourself.
Let them say,
let people
this joke
say,
has been done
you.
before, or this is basic ass, and you're like, yeah, I'm basic. That's fine.
But it is interesting that we've sort of commodified or like totally systematized through social media the experience that you're talking about, where it's like instinctively, I think what's going on there is people go, you gave me FOMO, fuck you, like to the breakfast lady. You're like lashing out because you resent the feeling that you had reading that, like my life isn't. And I do think that maps really interestingly to being a dude in the Midwest who's like, I gotta fucking get out of here. I have 3 kids already. And I love that his young kids already know what's up from watching him. They're like, do you want to be filmmakers when you grow up? No. And this is so true. They're like, no, it takes too much time and money. And you're like, hell man.
That guy, they got it.
You already figured this shit out.
That's so funny.
It's
like
so
a
great.
very classic writing refrain,
Yeah.
or at least I was told this a lot in college. Was they're like, "Do you want to be a writer?" And you're like, "Yeah." And they're like, "Can you do anything else? Because if you can do anything else, do that."
Truly, yeah,
Mhm.
truly, yeah. That's
Yeah.
what that David guy was saying. Is like, if I could do anything else, I wish I could, but I can't. And like
Mhm.
that's where I find myself. I mean, I'm lucky. Like I'm one of the lucky ones. Like I get to actually make stuff I like. But like if I could fucking
Yeah.
work at a call center or just be a guy that works in IT, I wish I could, but I can't. I got that little voice in the back of my head that says I have to keep doing this, or else I'm gonna explode.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Should we start another call or should we like wrap it up? What are you guys feeling?
I'm good to wrap up.
Mhm.
Yeah, it is
We got
gonna.
5
You got
minutes.
the ping. We got 5 minutes.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
let's
yeah.
wrap up. Abe, do you need to make a note of the time or whatever?
No,
Or you'll
I'm
just
good.
eyeball it. All right, cool. All right. Well, speaking of finding yourself, Cody, where can folks find you? Stay abreast of what you're working on. See all your best, newest stuff.
I'm on Instagram at Yay for Zig. The only thing I have coming up is Miles Morales Spider-Man #1 comes out December 7th. That's where I've been putting most of my the
yeah.
voice in my head to tell me what to write for that. So like that's
Yeah.
the main thing. It truly is a 10-year long thing that I've been working on. So like getting that has been a complete surreal little dream come true. So like it's very crazy to think that I'm writing a Miles Morales comic book, but I'm writing a Miles Morales comic book.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And I can tell from just look on your face, but also like the shit you write on Twitter. Like it's so cool to see you. You appreciate it so deeply.
yeah,
Obviously,
it's crazy.
great to see this
And,
come
like
to
I have
fruition. for
literally
you,
I
man.
have the first issue I bought 10 years ago on my other little creative desk, and it's crazy to think that in a month's time I'll have my issue next to that. It's really
Woo!
really well.
That's
Fuck yeah,
something to be
dude.
proud of. And don't forget to have fun with
It's like
it.
the
Thank you.
opposite feeling of American movie.
Yeah,
right now.
yeah. My dreams came true.
Yes, the nerds
Yeah.
won. Comic books are in. I love that. I love it so much. Well, this has been a great conversation. I love finding new weird like looking at the subtext of what this movie is. I mean, there's a lot of things we could have covered, but I think reflecting as we're all kind of comedians and artists and stuff, I think it was a pretty fun
No, I
conversation
really
to
enjoyed
have with you, man.
Yeah.
And would love to have you back again.
Yeah, anytime. Let me know.
Heck
all right.
yeah. All right,
Mike,
keep
you got
kicking
anything
ass.
else?
Nope. Just
All right.
warm fuzzies, and we're out.
Thanks for listening.
This has been a Small Beans endeavor. We're a bunch of pals who make podcasts, sketches, music, web series, and movies. The Beans always have new ideas percolating, so make sure to check us out at patreon.com/smallbeans. That's patreon.com/smallbeans, where you can browse all of our current and past content, see what we've got planned in the future, and learn how your support can help the small beans grow into huge, giant monster beans. If you enjoyed this content module, please like, rate, subscribe, or tell a friend about us. We love you.